Shabbat Shalom, everybody. There's always a dilemma that rabbis have over when do you start putting together your thoughts for your sermon. You want to do it soon enough that you have time to gather your thoughts, but if you do it too soon, then things can happen that make you have to just start all over again because events require you to pivot and to go in a different direction. So actually, I was going to go in a certain direction, and what is happening right now in Israel, in the Middle East, has only reinforced for me the need to go in the direction that I anticipated. So I won't keep you guessing. What I want to talk about this morning are the inevitable resentments that we have towards one another, brothers and sisters and colleagues and co-religionists and citizens of the same country on the one hand, and the realization when we are facing a common shared existential threat that we have to somehow transcend all of those differences and all of those resentments. So I'm going to begin, because the summer is upon us, with a recommendation for a summer read. It's a novel that I just read. It's called Stockholm, written by an Israeli author. Her name is Noah Yedlin. And it's a really interesting novel. It's kind of a dark humor novel, but it's also very profound. So it's about 5 Israeli friends who are all very accomplished. One of them is up for the Nobel Prize. That's why the novel is called Stockholm. And what I'm about to tell you will not spoil the novel because it's all on the jacket of the novel itself. So this individual who's up for the Nobel Prize dies suddenly in his apartment. And the friends decide that they are going to keep his death a secret for as long as they can, because you cannot win a Nobel Prize if you are dead, or at least if you are known to be dead. So that's the premise. So they keep his death a secret and are hoping that if he wins the Nobel Prize, they can afterwards tell the Nobel Committee what the situation was. Now, that sounds a little bit bizarre, and it sounds, almost like it's going to lead to slapstick, and there's a little bit of that in the novel. But what's interesting is that the novelist is very good at unpacking the internal dynamics that are going on, dynamics within each individual, but also between them. So it turns out that they want their friend to win the Nobel Prize in part because they care about him and want him to be honored. They are very happy for him, they keep saying, but they also have their own selfish reasons for wanting him to win. And so this is a novel that's about mortality, it's about jealousy, it's about all the very real feelings that human beings have. And I recommend it. You can read it on a nice long Shabbat afternoon. It's called Stockholm by Noah Yedlin, translation by Jessica Cohen. Now moving on to this week's parasha. So we have a showdown really between Aaron and Miriam on the one hand and Moses and God on the other. 2 siblings in essence saying about the third, we resent the fact that he seems to have a special relationship with God, who clearly in this story is representing the parent. And so they start out by dissing the spouse that Moses chose, and they go on to say, Harak ach b'Moshe diber Adonai halo gam banu diber. Has God only spoken through Moses? Has God not also spoken through us as well? And we know what happens next. God says, my relationship with Moses is unique. I speak directly with him. God strikes Miriam with a skin ailment. Aaron says to Moses, please intercede, pray for her. And then Moses does and cries out, shortest prayer in the Bible, El na refa na la. God, pray, heal her. Sometimes when we are at each other, it takes a clear existential threat to remind us that we really do care about each other, that we really are connected to each other, that we really do have a certain admiration and even love for each other. And with Miriam and Moses, it is so deep. She, of course, saved his life when he was a baby, and he is now going to intervene to ensure that she will be healed. Existential threats have a way of prodding us to transcend our disagreements and our resentments. And I want to turn our attention now to what is going on in Eretz Yisrael. To start by saying that I visited Israel in July of 2023, and you may recall that the months leading up to October 7th were months when Israelis were very much opposing each other. There were protests that took place in the streets. Major highways were shut down because Israelis were protesting proposed judiciary reforms. I actually participated in one of the demonstrations, and I was proud to see that Israelis were able to protest peacefully, a hallmark of Israeli democracy. But I was saddened to see the animosity, the ways that people were vilifying each other publicly. And then came October 7th, and a lot of the animosity, a lot of the disunity was set aside as all Israelis supported the response to October 7th. And where are we now? 600 plus days into the war, a lot of the animosity has returned. Families of the hostages are including the government of not being sufficiently mindful of returning the hostages as a priority. Families of reservists who have been serving for months and months at a time are deeply resentful, and the resentment is growing of Haredi, ultra-Orthodox Jews that don't want to serve altogether in the army. And so there is a lot of animosity that is growing, and I believe that much of it is understandable. And again, thank goodness Israel is a democracy, and thank goodness there can be disagreements that are shared. Very important here in the United States and in Israel to support the rights of people to disagree and even to protest publicly. All of that is important. What we're seeing now, which is extremely significant, is that the existential crisis that Israel is currently facing with Iran, that is reaching a significant turning point, is causing Israelis to articulate how much they have in common, how much they need to unite against this shared and common existential threat. And I want to share with you words that were written by Yair Lapid, who is part of the opposition in the Knesset and who has many critical things to say about the current Israeli government. But here is what he said right now, and I think it really underscores the point that I'm trying to make. This isn't the first time that the Iranian leadership is misreading Israel. We are a thriving democracy. There is no hiding the disagreements in our country and the passionate debates in our politics. Iran's leaders assume that democracy is the source of our weakness. The opposite is true. It is the source of our strength. Israel has always stood united in the face of existential threats. I stand fully behind the goals of this operation and behind our security services. The opposition will offer assistance in any way it can to ensure the success of the mission. When it comes to the security of the people of Israel in the face of our enemies, we are one people with one mission. Our children will not live in fear of an Iranian nuclear bomb, not today, not ever. That is the opposition speaking. That is somebody who has much criticism of the current government saying, when it comes to a common existential threat, we are one people, we will rise above our differences to confront the common threat. To which I say, bravo, that is the Jewish people, that is the Jewish state at its best. So yes, brothers and sisters and colleagues and co-religionists and citizens of the same country will often disagree. and we'll often resent each other, and we'll sometimes express the disagreements and the resentments in ways that are painful. But let us hope that we will always recognize the threats that face us all, and that we will be able to unite against those threats. So my prayer on this Shabbat, as Israel is facing this current painful and difficult and vulnerable moment, is that all of us, brothers and sisters, will be able to rise above our differences, recognizing how much we need to rely upon each other. And God willing, one day, hopefully not too far away, all humanity will recognize that we are indeed brothers and sisters, so that we can somehow transcend our differences, stop fighting each other, and start to confront the challenges that we all face together. May this happen sooner rather than later. Ben Omar, Amen.